I think I would like to do a little spiel about standardized testing. Go back a little bit. So you took the ACT, you took it twice. You didn't study for a really long period of time. It wasn't super drawn out. What kind of, if you want to jog your memory a little bit from meeting ACT for the first time, like starting to study for it, and then taking it twice, what are some difficulties with this exam that you felt were things that you had to kind of jump over, like hurdles to jump over, things you had to figure out, or things you had to spend maybe a little more time to learn? Were there certain difficulties, or were there certain things that you felt were you had natural strengths for this that were fit for this exam?
And to begin, when did you start?
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I started studying for the ACT probably June June or July right after sophomore year. So summer after sophomore year, and I finished the ACT by December. I think I took it in October and November. October and December, and it was short, 6 months, pretty intense studying over the summer, a lot of practice tests. I was pretty consistent with math and English. I think those were my strong sections. I preferred the ACT over the SAT because the sections are shorter. The questions seem a lot more straightforward, especially the math and English sections. They're longer, a lot more questions, but you're just kind of working through all of them one by one. And I really preferred that fast-paced turnover. The SAT's kind of a little bit more drawn out than I'd like. And so I think that's why I chose the ACT.
I just want to add in that what Hana is discussing right now is the paper 1600.
Yes.
So Hana was taking the ACT when the SAT version was the paper SAT. This was like the 80-line long reading section and like the 50-minute long math section.
Yes.
Now that we have the digital SAT is at some points slightly shorter than the ACT now, but just for reference, this is what we're comparing.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that's totally valid, I think. And this is also, I just want to point out one more thing. I hate to say that I told you so, but this is the ideal study schedule for a student taking a standardized test, which is you start at the beginning of summer, you study for all of summer, you take 2 exams in the fall, and then maybe you take a January or February, and then you should be done, which is also how I did the SAT. This is the ideal study schedule. This is exactly what I mean when I say get in, do the work, and then get out and move on with your life, do something else.
Yeah.
Because junior year is so busy.
Yes, junior year is busy, and having those tests done is a huge burden lift off your shoulders. You can focus on your APs. You can focus on kind of start thinking about college and what you want to do in college and how you're going to prepare for your college apps, and on all these extracurriculars that you're trying to do while you're in college, because junior year is very, very important and very busy, especially with the standardized tests. So.
I'll let you get back to talking about the ACT though. So you said read English, math, your strong suit. I'm surprised you didn't say that science was your strong suit.
Science and reading were kind of like curveballs. I'm pretty sure I retook the ACT, or maybe it was my reading that was kind of not great the first time, but science is not as sciencey as you think. And from what I had experienced, it was a lot of interpreting graphs, reading charts, kind of reading between the lines and making sure you don't lose the details. And so I think just a lot of practice. And one thing that really helped me a lot was not lingering on those questions, because the ACT is so fast. It's like 35 minutes per section. At least it was when I was taking it. And it's easy to get caught up on one passage and one question, but 35 minutes, I think 40 questions, that was not a lot of time. Or maybe it was 35 questions and 40 minutes, but not a lot of time. And something that really helped me was like kind of marking which questions I need to come back to. Sometimes your gut really is right after reading the passage and skimming through it. And so when you don't have time, it's better to like maybe come back to that. If you do have time, then like spend like 5-6 minutes on this question over and over again. I think that really helped me the second time. And the first time I took it, I remember being really upset because the ACT just became computer based. And I was so upset. I'm like, how am I going to check my answers? I don't have a booklet to come back to. We have a whiteboard. What am I going to do? But, that kind of helped me in the math and the English, kind of just like let go, like go on to the next question. Maybe you can mark whatever question you need to come back to, but the ACT is so fast. Like your gut is sometimes really right, and you just gotta trust it. Like trust the prep that you have been doing, and trust that process, and it should turn out okay. And I think that's what really helped me. And I don't think there's an essay in the ACT anymore, but I remember when we turned computer, we got to type it. So that was a pro for us. I remember we could write so much because people were like trying to handwrite out this long essay and got to go back and like erase. You don't want the sentence anymore, but now it's typing. So that was really, really a pro.
So that's really interesting to talk about because the SAT just became digital last year. Last year for international, this year for the U.S. students. So you're saying actually there was this advantage to the digital format because it kind of forced you to focus on one question at a time. It forces you to kind of move on and kind of start anew when you move on to a new question. I think this is a advantage of the digital tests or digital format that we don't really talk about a lot. So that's really, I think, interesting for students to think about, especially because in the States you can still choose to take a paper version, but this seems like a really good reason to take the digital version. Also, not to age myself so much, but I took the 2400 SAT and we had to write a handwritten essay.
Oh, wow.
It was section 1.
I remember practicing that, and I did like maybe 2 or 3, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to practice. I'm just going to wing it.
It was awful. But going back to kind of talking about the ACT, you mentioned that a lot of practice, like repeated practice, was super helpful. Is there anything else in terms of maybe a specific section or a specific study skill that you had to focus on during those 6 months that you had to really kind of work on to increase your score for a certain subject or maybe a certain question type?
I think just repeating the sections in that time frame. Sometimes when you have like those workbook questions and you just work through them, it's helpful but not really helpful because like having the time crunch and practicing with the time crunch is super helpful. Not cheating yourself when you are setting that timer and practicing all those 35-40 questions. I think that was the most helpful for me. I think the more practice tests and sections you take, you notice these patterns and the types of questions, especially in math and English. And I think that is kind of something that I was able to practice a lot and like kind of nail down because I've seen this type of question. I still don't know why it's this answer, but this is what I remember. And I think there are a few like instances like that, not too many, but just kind of seeing many different questions and many different types of passages and different topics. And, sometimes I like read like the titles of passages and I'm like, oh, I don't really like this kind of topic, I don't know if I want to read this, but like kind of exposing yourself to many different passages, I think it helps just like prepare you, and running through that timed section was always helpful for me.
So it sounds like high volume of practice under testing conditions, which I totally agree with. And that's most of what I try to do for the website as well, which is we try our best to replicate the exact same template, make sure you have the exact same tools as the official exam, and make sure you get a lot of different practice with a lot of different versions of that test to make sure you feel prepared for test day.